The Horizon 9 had been drifting through the vast emptiness of the Rho-Perseus system for weeks when it intercepted the signal. A pulse, faint but deliberate, reverberated through the probe's sensors, its frequency uncannily resembling human brainwaves. This wasn't the first time deep space probes had picked up strange signals, but this one was different. It felt alive. On Earth, the anomaly caused a stir. Dr. Elara Voss, renowned for her groundbreaking work in synorchaeology, was deep in a lecture at the University of Lunar Prime when the summons came. She hadn't wanted to leave her research, but the briefing from the United Earth Alliance, UAA, was compelling. An artifact of unknown origin, a structure orbiting a black hole, and a signal that might represent the first direct communication with an ancient intelligence. It was everything she had ever dreamed of and feared. The Erebus, a state-of-the-art research vessel retrofitted for the mission, was hastily dispatched. Aboard were Elara and a hand-picked team: Saul Bennett, a grizzled ex-Marine tasked with security; Ren Nakamura, a brilliant but erratic cryptographer; and Saria, an advanced AI specializing in alien languages. Each brought a critical skill, but none had anticipated the sheer scale of what they would find. As the Erebus entered the Rho-Perseus system, the silent monument came into view. Its size was incomprehensible, a massive, obsidian-like structure, smooth and seamless, stretching hundreds of kilometers across. It floated unnaturally close to the black hole, immune to the gravitational pull that should have consumed it eons ago. Its surface seemed to shimmer, as though rejecting the light around it. "This thing's not just ancient," Saul muttered as the ship approached. "It's defying every law of physics we know." Elara stood at the viewport, her breath caught in her throat. She had spent her life studying ruins, relics, and crumbling civilizations. But this was no ruin. It was intact, pristine, and waiting. The signal intensified as they drew closer, resonating through the ship. Ren, seated at his workstation, frowned. "It's not random noise," he said, his fingers flying over the console. "There's a pattern here, but it's adaptive. It's like it's aware of us." Ilara's heart quickened. "Saria, can you analyze the frequency?" The A's holographic form flickered to life, its calm, synthetic voice filling the room. "Analyzing. The signal appears to contain multi-layered data packets. Decryption will require sustained interaction with the source." As the Erebus established orbit, a docking shuttle was prepared. The team suited up, tension thick in the air. They descended toward the monument's surface, the shuttle shaking slightly as they breached its invisible energy field. When the hatch opened, silence greeted them. The monument's surface stretched endlessly, smooth as glass, yet strangely warm to the touch. Elara stepped forward, placing her hand against the obsidian. The signal changed instantly, a low hum vibrating through the ground. Lines of light raced across the surface, forming symbols that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "Elara," Ren whispered, his voice trembling. "I think it knows we're here." Elara's hand trembled as she felt the vibrations pulsing through the monument's surface. The symbols glowed brighter, shifting in form like liquid light. Ren approached cautiously, his portable console scanning the energy emissions. "This is insane," he muttered, eyes wide. "The symbols, they're not static. They're responding to inputs, recalibrating based on something, probably us." Saul stood a few paces back, gripping his pulse rifle. "Inputs or not, I don't like this. If that thing decides we're a threat, we won't have time to run." Elara ignored them, her mind racing as she traced the lines of light. "It's a language," she whispered, awe creeping into her voice. "But it's not just linguistic. It's reactive, like it's analyzing our presence and tailoring itself to communicate." "Tailoring to what?" Saul asked, his voice gruff. "To us," Saria's voice chimed in through their comms. The A's analysis streamed to their helmets. "Preliminary findings suggest the patterns are influenced by neural frequencies, specifically Dr. Voss's brainwave activity. Ren looked up sharply. Are you saying it's reading her mind? Not precisely, Saria replied. It's more likely creating an adaptive interface based on sensory and cognitive feedback. Before Ilara could respond, a deep hum resonated through the air, reverberating in their chests. The ground beneath them rippled faintly, and a section of the monument's surface began to shift, folding inward like a doorway forming from liquid obsidian. Beyond the opening lay a cavernous chamber bathed in faint ethereal light. Ilara stepped back instinctively, her breath hitching. It's inviting us in, she said. Saul scoffed, or luring us into a trap. We didn't come all this way to turn back now, Ilara said, her voice firm. She glanced at Saul. Stay sharp, but we're going in. The team entered the chamber cautiously, their lights caning the interior. The walls pulsed with shifting patterns, the glowing symbols moving like constellations in an alien sky. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, crystalline and transparent, emanating a soft blue light. Ren approached it first, his console beeping rapidly. This is incredible. The energy signature here is off the charts. It's not just a power source, it's a processor, a data core. Ilara moved closer, her eyes fixed on the pedestal. As she reached out, a holographic display erupted above it, projecting a series of shifting star maps. The maps morphed rapidly, centering on one system after another before collapsing into unreadable patterns. Saria's voice filled their helmets. The projections correspond to known galactic coordinates. However, several appeared to reference systems that are uncharted or long destroyed. Ren's face paled. Destroyed? By what? Before anyone could answer, the pedestal emitted a sudden burst of light. The chamber trembled as a deep, resonant voice filled the air, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Who are you to disturb the silence? The team froze, their hearts pounding. Ilara swallowed hard and stepped forward. We're explorers, seekers of knowledge. Who are you? The voice paused, as if considering. Then it replied, its tone edged with both curiosity and warning. You walk upon sacred ground. Prove you are worthy, or the silence will reclaim you. The chamber began to shift, the walls rearranging into a maze of glowing pathways. The doorway behind them sealed shut, and the voice whispered again, its tone now ominous. Begin? The glowing pathways twisted and shifted, forming an ever-changing labyrinth. Ilara and her team stood frozen, their breaths loud in the oppressive silence. The voice's words echoed in their minds. Prove you are worthy, or the silence will reclaim you. What the hell does it mean? Prove you are worthy. Saul barked, his rifle scanning the shifting walls. Ilara's mind raced. It's a test. It's studying us, our choices, our cooperation. She glanced at Ren. Can you map the patterns? Find an exit? Ren frantically worked his console, sweat beading on his forehead. I'm trying, but this thing is rewriting itself in real time. It's like it's alive. The team moved cautiously, each step lighting up tiles beneath their feet. The walls shimmered with symbols that seemed to watch them. A low hum built in the air, growing louder with each moment. Whatever we do, we need to move, Saul growled. Standing here makes us sitting ducks. Suddenly, a sharp crack reverberated through the chamber as part of the floor collapsed behind them, revealing a void of swirling light. The monument wasn't waiting for them to decide, it was forcing their hand. Go, Ilara shouted, leading the way deeper into the labyrinth. As they navigated the maze, the glowing walls displayed scenes that seemed eerily familiar, fragments of Earth's history, humanity's wars, achievements, and failures. The monument was not just observing, it was judging. What's it showing us? Ren asked, his voice shaky. Why would it care about our history? It's trying to understand us, Ilara said. It's deciding if we're worth the knowledge it protects. The path split ahead, 2 corridors branching in opposite directions. One glowed with a soft, inviting light. The other pulsed with ominous red shadows. Which way? Saul asked, scanning the options. Before Ilara could answer, Saria's voice cut in through their comms. Warning. Energy surges detected in the red corridor. The lighted path appears safer. Appears safer, Saul muttered. That's not exactly comforting. Ilara hesitated, her instincts pulling her toward the more dangerous path. If this is a test, the obvious choice might be the wrong one. The monument isn't looking for easy answers. Saul groaned but nodded. Fine. Let's hope your gut's right, Doc. They turned into the red corridor, the air growing heavier with every step. The walls began to pulse faster, symbols flashing erratically. Suddenly, the path ahead opened into a massive chamber. At its center stood a shimmering projection of an alien figure, tall and cloaked in ethereal light. Its eyes burned with intelligence, its gaze fixed on the intruders. You dare to choose the path of defiance, it intoned, its voice resonating like the monument's. Your species thrives on risk, yet often succumbs to folly. Prove your resolve, or face annihilation. Before they could respond, the figure raised an arm, and shimmering constructs formed around them, mechanical beasts that roared to life. Combat simulations? Saul grinned, raising his rifle. Finally, something I can handle. Ilara grabbed his arm. It's not just about fighting. We need to outthink this. The beasts lunged, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Amid the battle, Ren deciphered a pattern in the flashing symbols. Ilara. The symbols, if we align them, it might disable the constructs. Ilara and Saria worked frantically, matching the sequences while Saul held off the attackers. The tension was suffocating, but finally, the last symbol snapped into place. The constructs froze, then dissolved into light. The alien figure regarded them, its expression unreadable. Your defiance is matched by ingenuity, it said. The trial continues. The walls shifted again, opening a new path ahead. Exhausted but resolute, the team pressed on, unaware that word of their discovery had reached far beyond the monument. Beyond the void of space, a Vrash fleet had entered the system, their eyes set on claiming the monument and its secrets for themselves. The team staggered forward, the weight of the monument's trials pressing on them. Ilara's mind raced as she considered the alien figure's words. The trial continues. What lay ahead? Would the monument's tests grow more grueling? Behind them, the labyrinth sealed itself, leaving no way back. The air grew colder, the glow of the walls dimming as they entered a cavernous new chamber. This space was vast and silent, the ceiling stretching beyond sight. In the center, a monolithic console pulsed with faint rhythmic light. Ren scanned it with his handheld device. This console, it's not just a control panel, it's an interface, direct neural links, cognitive imprints. It's ancient tech, but light years ahead of anything we've seen. Ilara stepped forward cautiously, her curiosity outweighing her fear. It's a repository. This is where the monument stores its knowledge. Before she could explore further, Saria's voice interrupted. Alert! Unidentified vessels detected entering the system. The team froze. What vessels? Saul demanded, gripping his rifle tighter. Saria's tone remained calm but urgent. Vrash warships. Their approach vector suggests they are targeting this structure. Estimated time to arrival, 20 minutes. Saul cursed under his breath. Of course, the Vrash couldn't resist sticking their claws into this. The Vrash, a brutal, expansionist race, had been humanity's rivals for decades. If they reached the monument, they wouldn't hesitate to seize or destroy it. We don't have time to linger, Ilara said firmly. Whatever secrets this monument holds, we need to unlock them before the Vrash get here. The console's surface came alive as Ilara touched it. Streams of alien data cascaded through the room, filling the air with holographic projections. Star maps, equations, and cryptic symbols danced around them, overwhelming in their complexity. Ren's eyes widened. This is everything. Star systems we've never charted, technologies that could revolutionize civilization. But there's a pattern here. It's leading to something specific. Can you follow it? Alara asked, her voice taut. I'll try, Ren replied, diving into the data stream. As Ren worked, the chamber trembled. The monument seemed to sense the approaching threat, its walls pulsating with urgency. Saria's voice chimed again. The Vrash fleet is accelerating. Estimated time to engagement, 10 minutes. Saul checked his weapon and muttered, They're gonna get here before we're done. Not if we find a way to defend ourselves, Alara said, scanning the projections. Her eyes locked on an image, a massive array of defensive satellites circling a planet. This monument is a fortress. It must have defensive capabilities. Ren nodded, frantically typing. If I can access the right subsystem, I might be able to activate them. But I'll need more time. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber as another construct materialized. This one was larger and more menacing than the last, its form resembling a hulking, multi-limbed beast of pure energy. It's testing us again, Alara realized. It won't let us access its power without proving ourselves. Perfect, Saul growled, raising his rifle. Keep it busy. Ren, do your thing. The battle was chaotic. The construct moved with impossible speed, forcing Saul and Alara to dodge and counterattack. Saria fed tactical data into their comms, guiding their movements as they worked to weaken the creature. Meanwhile, Ren's fingers flew over the console. I'm close, but this thing is encrypted like nothing I've ever seen. You'd better hurry, Saul shouted, narrowly avoiding a swipe from the construct's glowing claws. Alara spotted a weak point in the construct's shimmering form, a core of concentrated light at its chest. Saul, focus your fire there. Saul complied, unleashing a barrage of energy rounds. The construct shrieked, its form destabilizing as it dissolved into sparks. Ren let out a triumphant yell. I've got it. Defensive systems are online. The chamber vibrated as the monument responded, massive energy cannons emerging from its exterior. Outside, the Vrash fleet was met with a barrage of light, their ships scattering as the monument's automated defenses came to life. For a moment, relief washed over the team, but then Ren frowned, pointing to the console. There's something else, a final lock. It's not letting us access the full archive yet. Alara stared at the cascading symbols, her heart sinking. The monument's greatest secrets were still out of reach, and the Vrash weren't finished yet. The trial isn't over, she whispered. The chamber quieted as the monument's defensive systems roared to life beyond its walls. Outside, the Vrash fleet reeled from the sudden counterattack, scattering to avoid annihilation. Inside, Alara and her team stood amidst the remnants of the defeated construct, their breaths heavy. Ren stared at the console, his brow furrowed. The defenses bought us time, but we're not done. The monument's full archive is behind a lock, an ancient failsafe. It won't release its secrets until we pass the final trial. Saul scoffed, reloading his rifle. Another trial? What does it want now? A blood sacrifice? Alara shot him a sharp look. This isn't just about fighting. The monument's testing our intelligence, our unity, and our worth. We've passed the physical challenges, but this lock, it's something deeper. The console shimmered, and a holographic interface expanded before them, projecting a labyrinthine structure of glowing threads. Each thread pulsed with light, converging at a single point, a massive sphere suspended in midair. The sphere rotated, revealing intricate glyphs across its surface. Ren's console beeped urgently. It's a puzzle. A network of interconnected pathways, each one representing a fragment of data. We need to align them to unlock the core. How do we do that? Saul asked, glancing warily at the projections. Alara stepped closer, studying the glyphs. It's not just a puzzle. It's a history, an encoded representation of the monument's purpose. Each thread is a moment, a decision, a legacy of the species that built this place. The team worked together, their hands moving through the holographic threads. As they aligned the pathways, the projections changed, revealing glimpses of an ancient civilization. They saw vast cities powered by crystalline energy, fleets of shimmering starships, and alien beings standing united beneath a sky filled with swirling light. This species. They were builders, visionaries, Ilara said softly. They created the monument as a repository of everything they knew, everything they were. It's a message in a bottle, left for anyone worthy to find it. Ren nodded, his eyes fixed on the shifting threads. And they're testing us because they want to ensure their legacy doesn't fall into the wrong hands. As they connected another thread, the projection shifted again, this time showing the downfall of the civilization. A monstrous fleet descended from the stars, consuming the builders' worlds in fire and shadow. The last image was of the monument itself, launched into the void as their final act of defiance. What happened to them? Saul asked, his voice quieter than usual. They were wiped out, Ilara replied grimly, but they refused to let their knowledge die with them. As the final thread snapped into place, the sphere pulsed with light, and a deep hum filled the chamber. The monument's voice returned, resonant and commanding. You have shown resolve, wisdom, and unity, but the final truth demands sacrifice. The sphere split open, revealing a glowing core surrounded by shifting rings of energy. Symbols swirled around it, forming a single word in their language. Ren's breath caught. It's asking for a choice. The symbols translated in their neural links, the archive or the weapon. Ilara froze. The archive, it must be their knowledge, everything they've left behind. The weapon, their last line of defense against whatever destroyed them. Saul's jaw tightened. We can't let the Vrash take this. We need the weapon to hold them off. But the archive could change everything, Ren argued. It could advance humanity by centuries, maybe even millennia. The monument's hum grew louder, the choice hanging heavy in the air. Ilara stepped forward, her mind racing. Whatever she chose would determine humanity's future and the legacy of a long-dead civilization. With trembling hands, she reached for the core, her decision made. Outside, the Vrash fleet regrouped, their warships converging on the monument in a final assault. The choice Ilara made would decide whether humanity stood alone or carried the wisdom of the ancients into the stars. Ilara's hand hovered over the core, her heart pounding as the monument's voice echoed in her mind. The archive or the weapon? Time seemed to freeze. Saul's tense grip on his rifle, Ren's wide-eyed gaze, Seria's calculated calm, all of it faded into the background. Ilara thought of Earth, humanity's struggles, and their place in a galaxy filled with danger and wonder. Finally, she reached for the archive. As her hand connected with the glowing core, it pulsed with light, the room flooding with projections of alien scripts and shifting star charts. Ren exhaled in relief. You chose the archive. Saul scowled. We're about to be overrun, and you picked books. Ilara turned to him, her expression resolute. Knowledge is the ultimate weapon, Saul. If we can understand their technology, their strategies, we won't just survive the Vrash, we'll thrive. The monument's hum deepened, and the core expanded, releasing streams of data that wrapped around the team's neural links. The flood of information was overwhelming, and Ilara gasped as her mind filled with visions. Blueprints for starships that could bend spacetime. Techniques to harness energy from black holes. Medical advancements that defied the limits of biology. Each revelation was more staggering than the last. Outside, the Vrash fleet closed in. Their largest warship, the Vorath, unleashed a barrage of plasma rounds at the monument. The ancient structure's defenses flared, beams of light slicing through the void, but the enemy fleet pressed on. Seria's voice cut through the team's awe. Vrash forces are breaching the monument. Multiple insertion points detected. Saul grinned grimly. Guess it's time for the grunt work. Ren, Ilara, stay here and figure out how to use all this fancy tech. I'll handle our uninvited guests. Alara caught his arm. Saul, you can't take them alone. Watch me, he said, his smirk tinged with bravado. He turned and disappeared into the labyrinth. As Ren worked furiously to translate the data streams, Alara's focus shifted to the holographic projections. One in particular caught her attention, a fragment of text glowing brighter than the rest. This isn't just an archive, she whispered. There's something deeper here. Ren glanced over. What do you mean? She pointed to the text. It's a warning. The builders left this monument not only to preserve their knowledge, but to prepare us for what's coming. Whatever destroyed them, it's still out there. Ren paled, and it's heading for us. Alara nodded grimly. The Vrash aren't the real threat. They're just scavengers compared to what's on the horizon. Meanwhile, Saul fought his way through the labyrinth, using his rifle to cut down the first wave of Vrash infiltrators. Their insectoid forms scuttled through the monument's corridors, hissing commands to one another. Stay out of my house, Saul bellowed, unleashing another volley. But the Vrash were relentless. One of their warriors lunged, its claws raking across Saul's armor. He grunted, stabbing it with a combat knife before kicking it back. As more Vrash swarmed, a low rumble shook the monument. Energy conduits along the walls lit up, and a deep voice filled the air. Defense override initiated, purging intruders. Saul barely had time to react as the monument itself joined the fight. Panels in the walls opened, releasing glowing constructs that attacked the Vrash with surgical precision. Looks like the old place doesn't like visitors either, Saul muttered, wiping blood from his face. Back at the core, Alara and Ren pieced together the builder's final message. They knew their end was inevitable, Alara said, her voice heavy. But they believed in the strength of those who came after them. They believed in us. Ren frowned. The Vrash won't give up, and this place can't hold them forever. What do we do? Alara stared at the core, determination hardening her gaze. We activate the monument's ultimate protocol. If the Vrash want to fight, we'll show them what this legacy can do. She reached out, initiating the sequence. The room trembled as the monument's true power began to awaken. The moment Alara initiated the sequence, the monument responded with a deafening hum. The entire structure seemed to come alive, its walls glowing with radiant energy. Streams of data coursed through the air, as if the monument itself were recalibrating, awakening from a long slumber. It's happening, Ren murmured, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and concern. I can feel the power surging through the system. This is what it was built for. The walls shifted, revealing enormous energy conduits running along the ceilings, their once dormant circuits now pulsing with raw power. The monument was no longer just an archive, it was a weapon of unimaginable scale, prepared to defend against the very threat that had annihilated its creators. This is the final protocol, Alara said, her voice steady but filled with wonder. We're activating the full force of the monument's defenses, its offensive capabilities. We can use it to turn the tide against the Vrash, but only if we can control it. Ren quickly tapped into the data streams, trying to manage the system's vast energy reserves. It's more complex than I thought. The network is branching out, integrating everything: weapons, shields, even environmental controls. This thing is like a living entity. A harsh crackling sound interrupted them as the ground beneath their feet trembled. Outside, the Vrash had finally made it inside the monument, forcing their way through the lower levels. They were relentless, and their numbers were overwhelming. Alara's heart pounded. We don't have much time. Syria, status on Saul? Syria's voice crackled through their comms. Saul is holding them off, but he can't do it alone for long. The Vrash are spreading out across the structure. They're pushing toward the central core. Understood, Alara replied. Activate the external defenses. We need to buy Saul more time. Ren's fingers danced over the console, aligning the monument's systems. On it, locking down the exterior, shields at maximum, energy cannons charged. I'm activating the starship-grade weapons. The Vrash won't know what hit them. The room shook violently as the first wave of Vrash attackers, their warships now boarding the monument's internal docking bays, were hit by devastating blasts from the exterior cannons. The energy beams sliced through the Vrash ships with pinpoint precision, causing them to explode in violent bursts of light. "Nice shot," Ilara shouted, watching the data streams illuminate with the success of their counterattack. But as Ren and Ilara worked feverishly to fortify their position, a loud, resonating boom echoed from the depths of the monument. Saria's voice cut through the comms again, more urgent this time. "There's something else. A Vrash warlord. He's already deep inside, and he's making his way toward the core. He's not just a soldier. This one's different." A chill ran down Ilara's spine. "What do you mean, different?" "He's enhanced," Saria continued, her tone grim. "Vrash genetics. He's been augmented, biologically and cybernetically. We're dealing with their elite, something designed to breach the monument's defenses." Ilara exchanged a glance with Ren. They didn't have much time to figure out a strategy. "We'll hold the line here," Ilara said, her voice calm but commanding. "Ren, keep the systems online. Make sure the monument's weapons don't go offline. I'll go meet Saul. We need to stop that warlord before he reaches the core." Ren nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked tirelessly. "Be careful, Ilara. If that warlord gets to the core, we won't be able to control the monument's systems anymore." With a final glance at the monument's glowing heart, Ilara sprinted toward the chambers where Saul had last reported. The corridors were now filled with the unmistakable scent of ozone and the echo of distant battles. Saul was cornered. His back pressed against the wall, weapon raised, he fired round after round at the advancing Vrash forces. But they kept coming, overwhelming numbers, with more pouring in from every direction. His movements were slowed by the blood seeping from a gash on his arm, but his resolve was as sharp as ever. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. The warlord. He was massive, his body covered in thick, black exo-armor that hissed with energy. His eyes glowed an eerie red, and his mechanical arms whirred as they extended, ready to strike. Saul grinned grimly. "Well, finally, I was wondering when you'd show up." The warlord snarled, its voice a deep, menacing growl. "You should not have chosen the archive. You are too weak to wield such power." Saul's response was a roar of defiance as he lunged forward, ready to face the enhanced Vrash warrior in a final battle for humanity's future. The warlord's eyes gleamed with deadly intent as he advanced toward Saul. The heavy thud of his mechanized limbs echoed through the corridor, a slow, predatory rhythm that matched the tense beat of Saul's pulse. His wounds ached, but the fire inside him burned brighter than ever. The Vrash had no idea what they were up against. "You're just another soldier," Saul spat, raising his rifle and firing a burst of plasma at the warlord's chest. But the impact was absorbed by a shimmering shield, and the warlord barely flinched. The warlord's laugh was low and mocking, a sound that reverberated in the confined space. "You fight for a dying cause, human. The monument is nothing more than a tomb, and once I break it, you will be the next to join the dead." Saul grimaced. The warlord's armor was tough, nearly impenetrable, but Saul had faced worse odds before. He dropped his rifle and drew his combat knife, the blade glowing faintly as it adapted to his grip. "I've seen worse," Saul growled, "and I've killed worse than you." With a roar, Saul lunged, his knife flashing toward the warlord's neck. But the warlord's enhanced limbs moved with blinding speed, intercepting the strike with a metallic claw. He twisted Saul's arm, sending him crashing to the ground. The warlord stood over him, the air around him crackling with energy. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." His voice was a cold whisper of imminent death. But just as the warlord raised his mechanical fist to strike, A burst of light illuminated the corridor. Alara, panting and determined, appeared from the shadows. "I don't think you're going to have that pleasure." The warlord's head snapped toward her, his eyes narrowing as he recognized her approach. Ilara's rifle hummed with energy as she fired, hitting the warlord's shoulder with a powerful blast. The armor hissed, but it held strong. "You're too late," the warlord snarled. "The monument will be ours, and humanity will be crushed beneath the weight of its own arrogance." Ilara's eyes flashed with fury. Not today. She dove to the side, rolling and narrowly avoiding the warlord's retaliatory strike, then grabbed a nearby energy charge. She hurled it at his feet, the explosion sending shockwaves through the corridor. The warlord staggered back, momentarily disoriented, and Saul seized the opportunity. With a fierce roar, he charged again, his knife slashing through the warlord's exposed joints. The enhanced warrior howled in pain as sparks flew from the damaged exo-armor. But the warlord wasn't finished yet. He swung his massive arm, sending Saul flying across the room, slamming into the walls with bone-crushing force. "Ilara, take the shot!" Saul's voice was ragged, but his eyes were filled with defiance. "You can stop him now." Ilara's hands tightened around her weapon. She knew the risk. This was no ordinary enemy. But with the monument's power at their fingertips, they had one chance. With steady hands, Ilara lined up the shot, focusing on the warlord's weakened neck joint, the one place vulnerable to their weapons. Time slowed as she exhaled, her finger hovering over the trigger. "Dive, rash scum," she muttered under her breath, squeezing the trigger. The shot rang out like a thunderclap, and the warlord's head snapped back with a sickening crack. His body collapsed to the ground, lifeless and twitching. Outside, the Vrash forces were retreating. The monument's overwhelming firepower had torn through their fleet, scattering the remaining ships across the galaxy. But the battle was far from over. Ilara, Ren, and Saria knew they had to secure the monument's future. They had won the battle, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was only just beginning. Ilara moved to Saul's side, helping him to his feet. "You did good, soldier." Saul grinned through the blood on his lips. "We all did." Ren and Saria joined them, breathing heavily from their own efforts. The data from the monument's archive was now fully integrated, its vast wealth of knowledge available to them, but it came with an immense responsibility. The Vrash were defeated for now, but there were whispers in the galaxy, rumors of an even greater threat that would one day rise. "We'll need to be ready," Ren said, glancing at the monument's central core, still humming with its ancient power. Ilara nodded. "The legacy of the builders is ours now, but we can't afford to rest. We have to be the ones to guard it, to wield it wisely." The monument's light grew brighter, its hum a reminder that it was not just a weapon, but a beacon. A message. Humanity had unlocked the greatest mystery of the galaxy, and now the galaxy would never be the same again. As the team stood together, looking out at the stars beyond, they knew one thing for certain: their journey had just begun. The universe was vast, and they were ready to carve their place in it forever.